Mini-episode 1019 of the FDH Lounge is brought to you by Sportsology, delivering unconventional columns and webcasts about sports, TV, music, movies, and more. Follow them on the web at sportsology.com.
The FDH Lounge. You'll want to schedule your life around it.
A long time ago, on a gloomy, wet Cleveland spring night, two men stand alone amidst the late-night drizzle. Their voices echo across the vacant station parking lot as they debate the merits of the great American radio show that have been missing for far too long. On that night, an idea was born. That idea became the FDH Lounge. Welcome to the FDH Lounge.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the FDH Lounge. You've got two FDH Lounge original dignitaries, Rick Morris and Chris Galloway, here today. We are breaking down the NFL division by division. We have the AFC East on tap right here for 2018. And in looking at it, we're going to go overviews by division, how we see it playing out. And for the 38th consecutive year, Belichick and Brady basically have a bye through the division, almost onto the second round already, as it were, in looking at this here. Kind of ironic the way it works in sports, the same way that LeBron had in the Eastern Conference as far as getting through. Now LeBron goes and bequeaths that same advantage to Boston. So the Chouds are very lucky all the way around in terms of competition, Chris. I'm sure you can appreciate that. I've got them at 12-4. My predictions that I did in Fantasy Football Draftology 2018, these are a bit dated. These are from a couple weeks ago. So I'll be referring to these as we go along. I've got Buffalo and Miami at 6-10, but I'm kind of looking at them now and wondering how they both might make it to that point, and the Jets at 5-11. To me, the gulf in this division is almost bigger than it generally is at this point. Buffalo, with all of their issues at quarterback in the preseason, really seems to have taken a step backwards. Miami with Adam Gase, I'm getting that Bill Belichick version 1.0 flashback like in Cleveland. A guy who's a young genius who's drinking his own bathwater. And as a Dolphins fan, in addition to being a Browns fan, I've not been overly impressed with them to this point. And the Jets, I do not understand rushing Sam Darnold in there when you had Bridgewater. So to me, this is more of a layup for the Pats than usual in this division.
Well, I agree with you. The Pats are clearly the favorites here. I have them a little bit of a step back, though. I think that defense last year was suspect, and I don't think they did much at all, other than maybe you could argue Danny Shelton to help themselves. So I actually have the Patriots at 10-6, still winning the division. As you discussed, the second place battle will be between the Jets and the Dolphins. In my mind, it doesn't really matter. Neither one is going to the playoffs. I think that Dolphins are likely to be sort of a 7-9. Jets are 6-10, and really they're 6-10 because they're starting a rookie quarterback who at times will make a lot of mistakes and he will be overwhelmed at times. Don't get fooled by the preseason. Although, as you and I have discussed in previous shows, we both liked Darnold number one. We both wanted our Browns to take him.
Yep.
Not that I have, I've been very happy with what I've seen out of Baker Mayfield, but Darnold was my number one choice for QB just because I felt he was a safer in terms of upside. And so I think, that line the Jets have is just atrocious. And so I think between rookie QB, shipping off Bridgewater, atrocious line, I think I'm being probably generous at 6-10. And then the Bills, they're a mess. I mean, are they Oakland East at this point? They trade off McCarron to Oakland for way more than they ever should have gotten for him, and they're going to roll. They're clearly going to roll Allen out there. If not week one, it'll be week two. I mean, they seem like they are committed to doing it. Based on the talent on that team, assuming, Shady McCoy doesn't end up in jail for having his ex-girlfriend assaulted in his home, I still think they're looking at 3-13, maybe 2-14. The Bills are not going to be good. And Allen is going to need a lot of seasoning and a lot of work, and he's a young quarterback that would need a lot of help, and he's not going to get it. Now, let me just go back to the Patriots and say this. We're all penciling them in. Tom Brady is 41. If Tom Brady gets hurt, they're in trouble. That roster is, outside of Tom Brady and a couple running backs, is if you go up and down that roster, it's not very good. So I'm saying 10-6 because of Tom Brady. He goes down, and Brian Hoyer has to step in, and they're not a playoff playoff team. So that is all predicated on Tom Brady staying healthy.
See, that's very interesting because I look at it, and I'm not going to necessarily disagree with you in the sense of how much trouble that they would be in, but I look at it a little bit differently. Like, they do have depth in some places. Like, again, they've got like 27 guys who started at running back in the NFL, and I realize if you have that many, that probably means you don't have one legit one at this stage of their careers. But I look at it like, to me, this division is so pathetic. And again, Hoyer, I've never been a fan of his, never thought that he was a legitimate starting quarterback in the NFL for any kind of team with aspirations. But in this division, I kind of look at it like, you look at what they did with Matt Castle in 08. In any other year, I might say, yeah, one of these idiot teams is going to like rise up to 8-8 or 9-7 and might steal the division from them. But I don't think anybody could, by default, could steal this division from them, even if Hoyer was in there.
Well, I mean, if anybody could, it'd probably be the Dolphins. The other thing to remember, keep in mind, this is the worst offensive line they've probably ever run out in front of Tom Brady.
Yeah.
And so, you don't have that normally, and their second round pick is out for the season.
Right.
Isaiah Wynn.
Right.
So they tried to address it, and now they got problems. So I understand what you're saying, but you talk about Matt Castle in 08. There was a lot more talent on that team than this team has.
True.
And so they had a lot to work with. Where in this case, they don't. They're nowhere near the weapons and the skill players and the line, and especially the defense. The defense was a sieve last year. So I look at that as a recipe for disaster. If Tom goes down, with an injury of, more than, let's say, a game or two. But, I think they're toast, and it would allow some mediocre team like the Dolphins, to sneak in at 8-8 or something.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to deny that that's a good possibility. But yeah, it would take one of these teams certainly overachieving above the level I see them at. And again, part of that would be, depending on when they play New England, those all of a sudden become very winnable games, obviously, if Brady's not in there. So a swing of those games would be a key part of the component for the scenario that you're talking about there. I want to say this as well. I want to circle back around to, at the ass end of the division here, Buffalo, in all likelihood. Sean McDermott, I look at this like this is a guy at this point who I think might have Ray Rhodes disease / Gene Chizik disease. I mean, everybody makes a big deal out of, oh, they made it to the playoffs for the first time in forever. Yeah, and then reality sets in after that. There's a real problem a lot of times. Coaches peak too soon, and it's not necessarily the job that they're doing, right? It's all the things that come into play that make it happen. But everything last year, there's always a team or two that makes the playoffs. And you scratch your head and you go, how did that happen? Particularly, a lot of times there's one or two better teams in the NFC that didn't make the playoffs. Buffalo is that team from last year, like, oh yeah, okay, technically they made the playoffs, I guess you could say. You look at it now, like people are going to be going...
Andy Dalton.
Well, yeah. I mean, the 0-2 Cleveland Browns, I mean, we could do this all day. There are all kinds of teams that you can't believe somehow made the playoffs. The 0-2 Browns over the Patriots, who the other 3 years from 01 to 04 won the Super Bowl. That's maybe the all-time example of this thing here. So you look at it, and in Buffalo, you talk about being a victim of early success. Sean McDermott is set up for that like nobody else in the league.
Yeah, McDermott, I will say this. I think he's a good coach. I think his staff is very good. But I agree with you that the amount of players they've unloaded, they have $50 million in dead cap right now. I mean, it's nuts. I mean, thanks for taking Corey Coleman's salary. That's a recipe for disaster in the short term. And they don't have a lot of talent. They shipped it all off. And even though I think those coaches there are skilled and they're good coaches, sometimes you can be the best pottery maker in the world, but man, if the quality of the clay is terrible, it doesn't matter what you do. So I think they're looking at that for the next couple of years, and hopefully the Bills ownership is smart enough to realize they put this coaching staff, behind the 8 ball, and give them a few years to try to, sort of rebound. I will say this question for you, Dolphins fan. I assume this is the last year of the Ryan Tannehill experiment.
Yeah, it probably is. And that's the thing, too. typical lack of planning with the Dolphins. They're going into a season where they probably don't have much of an intention of extending him. And again, this is how the team operates. And I will say that in some of our past discussions that we have done of this nature on the show, there was an observation made, and I think it was made about the Dolphins by football analyst Kyle Ross, who had talked about the stars and scrubs syndrome. There are a couple teams in the league. Ironically, Ndamukong Suh, this is the first year of his career where he's not on a team like that with the Rams. There's just a lot of stars there, basically. The Lions, the Dolphins, there are teams in the league where they have a couple guys that really jump out at you, and then the rest of the roster not so much. The only difference between this Dolphins team and past Dolphins teams is they have less of those type of stars, more mediocrity, maybe less obvious holes, but roster construction has never been a solid thing in Miami. That's part of it too. That's part of why Brady and Belichick have coasted all these years in the division. We've talked about this before, you and I, what the other teams aren't doing. And Miami, this is another example of that. Tannehill, for what everybody knows, is probably his lame duck season. A roster that's just patched together, kind of catch as catch can. This is what you get.
Well, and they made the foolish mistake of sliding our boy Quentin Poling over to the practice squad. They need a high motor guy in that linebacking core.
They do, exactly. And the inability of them to see that is sort of a microcosm for where they're at, where they've always been over the last almost 20 years, and really the other three teams in the division. So yeah, I mean, that's a perfect way to go full circle on this. It is still New England and everybody else at the end of the day. You and I have got New England coasting through this division. Obviously, that assuming Tom Brady remains upright. If he doesn't, I still think they grind it out. You think it could be somebody else coming in the back door if that's the case. We'll see how it plays out. But for the AFC East, everybody, it's the more things change, the more things stay the same.
As we bring the show to a close, we would like to extend our deepest gratitude to NBC, CBS, ABC, Fox, all Clear Channel affiliates, TNT, TBS, USA, UPN, Deadspin.com, YouTube.com, YTMND.com, MySpace.com, various blogs, Fox News, CNN, CNBC, MSNBC, IamBoard.com, Billboard.com, Google.com, ESPN, ESPN2, ESPN News, ESPN Classic, NBA TV, NFL Network, Sports Time Ohio, Athlon Magazine, Comedy Central, Cartoon Network, The Boomerang Channel, QVC, BET, The Spice Channel, Steno Notebooks, Manwich, Papermate Office Supplies, waitresses, strippers, bartenders, garbage men, janitors, microwave popcorn, the writers of The Office, Scrubs, Entourage, My Name is Earl, Oz, Metalocalypse and the Boondocks, Aquafina, and The Periodic Table of Elements.